Hello, good evening, and welcome to the second round, meaning the second game of the World Chess Championship that is currently holding in Singapore, very beautiful country. So, in this game, Dingley, the world champion, had the white pieces against the challenger Gukesh from India. This is a very I would say very kind of boring game. Very nothing exciting about this game, and I think the reason is because from Dingling's point, it was okay to just play a quiet game and settle for a draw. And then from Gukesh's point, it's very important for Gukesh not to go crazy after the first round loss, after the first game loss, and just make peace and then just look to fight another day. So let us get right into it. In this game, Dinglery had the white pieces. So the game started with the move e4, e5, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop c4, the Goko piano, aka the Italian game. We could also give it the aka the boring game. It can be very boring. The same setup and not a whole lot going on. White is trying to put pressure on f7. Black is going to try to do the same thing, and then there's going to be c3, d3, castles. Depending on the setup, there's a4 play sometimes. Sometimes it is a3. Sometimes it's knight c3. Sometimes it is bishop to g5. There are several possibilities that can happen from this position. So in this game, Dingley actually played something a little out of place, just like the first game. It's like in this tournament, Dingley is really equipping himself with playing the not so usual moves. Maybe it's a strategy, and so far it's working for him. So let us get back to the game. The game went bishop to c4, bishop to c5, d3. Uh, what's the point of d3? Of course, the pawn push d3 defends the bishop on c4. There's a possibility of getting the bishop out. Of course, normally we don't get the bishop out right away. So after the move d3, black plays knight to f6, knight to c3. Like I said, in this position, normally c3 is the most played move. And what's the point of c3? The idea is just to throw the pawn to d4 to achieve a very nice pawn central for the white pieces, and that's actually going to help white control as many squares in the center. So Dingley plays knight c3. I kind of like Dingley's approach in this game match. It just kind of plain. It's pretty much plain chess, just getting the pieces out. Just very simple chess, nothing crazy. Not that he cannot play something crazy, but he's just keeping it really simple. And I think for now, the onus was on Gukesh to try to do something about Ding's approach to this match. So Dingley plays knight to c3, a6 is played, a4. Now, normally in the Guico piano, aka the Italian, anytime the a6 move is played, we always want to play a4. Several reasons. Because the a6 could be threatening two things. Number one, the advance of b5, putting pressure on the bishop. And number two, of course, creating the square for the bishop to retreat in case there is a a3, b4, something like that. So after the move a6, a4, d6, castles, h6. Now, after the move h6, bishop to e3. And yes, why shouldn't really bother about the bishop to g4 right now by playing this move h3? We don't want to make that h3 move, especially when black hasn't castled. Try not to make the h3 move when black hasn't castled, because when you do that, you're going to give black an opportunity to just run his pawn down, and it's going to get you a very, very good time. And even though with your king on the center, bishop is probably going to come to d7, queen e7, castle long. So the attack is actually going to get to you before you have a chance of doing anything to his own king. So bishop e3 is a nice alternative. And of course, get rid of that very active bishop, putting pressure on f2. So after the move bishop to e3, bishop to e6, a5. What's the point of a5? Just getting space, really. Remember the pawn push Dingley did during the first game. Dingley just kept pushing his pawn. From a6, I think it was a5, then a4, then a. That pawn just kept going all the way. And at the end of the day, that pawn caused a lot of problem for Gukesh in the first round. So a5, what's the point of a5? a5 is pretty much a gaining space move. Just trying to gain some space, nothing spectacular. So after the move a5, bishop takes c4, d takes c4, castles, bishop takes c5, d takes. At this point in time in the game, we all should know that this is going to go into a very boring game. Nothing happening, nothing exciting, you know. And like I said, from both players' point of view, it's very important not to go crazy. Just keep it simple and take your chance whenever the chance comes. So castle captures, b3 protects the pawn on c4. Queen captures, rook captures back, rook comes to the d file, trying to fight for the d file. An interesting thing is both parties have a very similar setup, except for the pawn on a5 and a6 and the pawn on h6. You could tell that almost everything on this path looks similar. Same thing here. So, like I said, we could look at this position and that this is not going to be an interesting game. But the reason we're actually going through this game is we have to check all the games. You know, we have to let people know what happened in every of the games. Hopefully, we're going to be able to go through all the 14 games and see how the match turned out. So, rook to c1. I wasn't really sure about that move. And I think the idea is to try to stop the tempo on this. Now, after knight d4, knight takes is not such a good move because you don't want this pawn to move. I think actually knight takes, but I think rook actually can capture. The rook can capture, double the rooks, and then just put pressure. You know, we don't want that unnecessary stuff. So rook to c1. I'm not so sure about that rook to c1. So knight d4 is played. Knight goes back to e1. You know, I've said this in the past. If a strong player, if a strong grandmaster decides not to lose a game, he really can make it happen. The reason why GM lose games is because in trying to win, it's like trying to punch your opponent. If you're trying to hit your opponent, you're going to open up yourself. But if you just stay still, you know, just play defense, just take away every opportunity your opponent has, I think a strong player can hold their own. Most of them, I think they can hold their own. Because you're really going to take a whole lot to try and play a strong player. If the player doesn't like commit himself by trying to get you first. So, and looking at this position, it's going to be very hard for Gukesh to get anything out. Now, knight goes to e1. Now, one of the questions we want to ask ourselves in this position is, if black is going to try to create any kind of play, what's that play going to be? Like, what point in white's position can black put pressure on and get something out? It's kind of difficult to tell. Now, if this rook can get to d2, that would be a nice move. But the moment the knight moves away, threatening the rook d2, the knight goes back to f3. So white is just going to keep it really simple as possible so that black has absolutely nothing he can make happen. So knight goes to e1, rook to d6. This is, of course, the idea is to double the rooks on the d file and just wait and see what happens. King f1. King f1 is a very important move. Why? When you start approaching the endgame, it is time for you to bring your king to the center of the board. Not right away, where opposites are on the board, because your king might, your king might just get trapped. But just start inching towards the center of the board, where the king becomes stronger. The more the pieces get exchanged on the board. So king f1 was played, and g6, rook back to d1, and I think a good idea for white is just double his rooks also on the d file. So rook d1 is played, rook to d, rook f to d8, f3 protecting the pawn. So that means this knight is free to move to d5. The knight is free to move, period. So f3 is played, king to g7, king to f2, keeping it really simple. Like I said, it's a very boring position, very boring game, but what can we do? They are doing whatever is best for them. h5 is played, knight goes to e2, trying to get the knight off the d4 square. Knight goes back to c6, knight goes to c3, telling black, I'm just going to keep it real simple. Knight goes back to d4, knight goes to e2, knight c6, knight back to c3. And after the next move, knight to d4, both players shook hands and call it a they pretty much made peace. So, like I said, it was a very on. In fact, I don't even know what word to use. Very well. Bottom line, it was a very boring game. But like I said, you can't blame these two guys. We have 13 more games to go. The first game was won by Dingley on the black side of the French. The second game ended in a draw. Dingley, the world champion, was on the white side of the Guco piano, which is also called the Italian game. So the third game is going to be coming up pretty soon. Yes, and in that game, Gukesh is going to be white, and I think he's going to try to see if he can score a point. It's very important for Gukesh to score as soon as possible if he's trying to beat Dingler in this match. He has to look to score as soon as possible. Okay, that's about it for now. Nothing much to be said, and of course, we're going to give you more of the games. And meanwhile, presently, I'm actually going to be playing the US Masters, and I hope to like share some of the games I play. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed. I'm really looking forward to this tournament. Okay, that's about it. See you all soon. Take care and bye for now.